How's it going, everyone? This is Spencer Connolly with Screen Rant. I am here at San Diego Comic-Con 2023, and I am here with Cliff Bleszinski to talk about the Scrapper book you have. First of all, how has Comic-Con treated you so far?
It's been weird, man. COVID, I really think messed everybody up in a lot of ways. It's like, we used to be, my wife and I were convention whores.
Sure.
Like, we just go to, like, PAX, we go to E3, we go to GDC, we go to Comic-Con, and it's one of those things that, like, it's messed with our heads because, like, being around crowds this large really freaks me out. And, also people don't know how to freaking navigate.
Yeah.
They just, like, kind of meander about, and, like, they stop in the middle of the aisles and everything like that, and, like, it's just, it's a lot. But I'm excited to actually be at Comic-Con with an actual freaking comic.
That's awesome. Yeah, let's talk about it. So, yeah, the World Scrapper
Plug.
Repping it right there. So cool. Let's get into it. So it's kind of like a cyberpunk dystopia.
Yeah.
First of all, before we get into the main character, tell me about the world that you've crafted first.
It's kind of Blade Runner vibes, and it's basically a metaphor for gentrification and the militarization of our police forces, right?
Yeah.
But also, about stray animals, and the fact that they can kind of rise up and actually like kick butt.
Yeah.
And the whole story is that I'll make it quick for you. I had an Australian Shepherd that I lost a while back. I had my own video game studio called Boss Key. That crumbled. The dog was dying. I had to put him down, and it broke my heart for about a year, right? And once the year of spontaneous crying stopped, my wife found me a Pomsky. That's mostly husky. And I learned that feelings are like rivers or tributaries where you can kind of like redirect them. And I redirected my sorrow from the loss of my Aussie into the love of this Pomsky. And then I sat back and I thought, because I love creating worlds, creating like Gears of War, working on Fortnite and whatnot. I thought, well, has there ever been a really badass dog superhero? And can you think of one?
Yeah, I mean, off the top of my head, maybe like Crypto, right?
Crypto's not badass, though.
Yeah, I mean,
he's for
just
like,
a superpowered
he's
dog.
for like 7-year-olds,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
so
I know my 2-year-old loves Paw Patrol.
So that's my question: is what happens when the kids who love Paw Patrol get a little bit older, right? What is there room for something kind of between Paw Patrol and the darker stuff? Something that's kind of PG-13 rated.
Right. I was kind of wondering because this is a dog taking on this totalitarian company. It's kind of overarching deal with modern society. It's pretty brutal. But with starring a dog, what made you want to take it that direction with it?
Because again, when the Paw Patrol kids get older, is there room for some Don Bluth kind of stuff?
Right.
Like All Dogs Go to Heaven, Dragon's Lair.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
You notice the style is kind of a little bit retro, right? Kind of a little bit Watchmen looking, right? And so the goal with this is to make it eventually an animated series, a video game, and a toy line. And that's the thing is, with my 25 years of video game experience, video games are often defined by the verbs of what the characters can do:
Sure.
run, jump, shoot, bark, etc. And so, if you notice in the comics, Scrapper can do a lot of cool stuff. He has a smell-o-vision, he has a super bark, and he hulks out at one point, right? And we establish in Act 1, that he saves a child that's being abducted by the evil corporation, and he has his best buddy, and he's essentially. I'm going to spoil it if I keep talking.
Sure.
But the thing is this comes from a place of heart, because I wake up every day with this Pomsky. Her name's Lady, by the way.
Lady.
Yeah, named after Sansa Stark's direwolf.
I was actually going to get into that. You mentioned Game of Thrones. Is there inspiration there? With the direwolves coming to protect their people? Is this kind of the same vibe tapping into that?
This dog is protecting my sanity and my heart. And I'm madly in love with her. I think she's just a wonderful dog. And, she's a little bit aloof, though. You have to earn her affection. That's the husky in her.
Right.
And so every day I wind up going down the YouTube rabbit hole of, like, huskies throwing temper tantrums, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is we actually scooped her up coming back from the final season premiere of Game of Thrones. I'm friends with David and Dan. And, and the final season, it was a little bit uneven. But we wound up getting to party with the cast until 4 in the morning in their hotel suite. And then we went down to Charlotte and picked up this beautiful little Pomsky. And my wife got a video of the first time I met her. And you could see the feelings in my face I'm gonna get misty talking about it. I love dogs, man. And so, we have a panel today at 5 p.m. and we're actually gonna open the panel showing that video. And it's hopefully it's a packed house. And I'm like, wow, great. People who like my work are gonna see me get misty-eyed.
That's so cool. And how does that translate into this comic with Scrapper?
It's basically a labor of love, and it's one of those things. I'm friends with this guy, John Nee. He used to work at Marvel and then Cryptozoic, and he is embedded deep into the comics business. And he introduced me to this amazing, badass woman named Alex DeCampi. She did a book called Dracula MRFer, trying to work on the cursing. She also did a book called Maddie with Duncan Jones.
Okay.
Duncan Jones did Source Code, Moon, and the World of Warcraft film. Also happens to be David Bowie's son. And she's just been amazing to work with. And I found creatively, as much as I like to create worlds and IP, I'm at my best when I have somebody to bounce ideas off of.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So you and your creative team, tell me how it goes from, the idea, the thought, and then the execution.
Well, what I did was I came up with the overall IP. I paid out of pocket for all of it, so I own the IP, which in the intellectual property world in entertainment is incredibly important. And then I paid for concept artists to, concept Scrapper as a puppy, as well as his hulked out mode and everything in between. And by the way, he's powered up with getting petted, by the way. Yeah. And yeah, so he get the scritches, as the kids say. And so then, I kind of created all the lore, and then Alex came in and she taught me how comics are made. This is the first comic I've ever done. Right, in spite of the fact that I've read a ton of them,
sure.
Right, and I love like Garth Ennis and Preacher and The Boys and all that, and and all of it. And it's one of those things that, like, the way that she has to do the script to describe every panel and the framing of it all, and then we have to, get the ink, the pencils, the inks. The coloring, the lettering, and then you also get a logo done by somebody else, and then cover variants. I never knew were that big of a thing, as much as I like comics. Like, different shops get different covers and things like that. And I just got really thrilled when my preview copies arrived at my house. Like, we live on screens, right? Like, everyone's like, oh, is it gonna be on Comixology? Yes, it's on Comixology now. You can check it out. But the thing is we look at screens so much that I like my medium physical. Like, on the back of my phone, I have a sticker that says book slut. And my bookshelf is literally overflowing. I wrote a memoir, by the way. It just came out in November called Control Freak, about my life in video games. Anyway, shameless plug right there. But yeah, I just, I like my comic books physical.
Yeah, and I feel like I can kind of feel that too in this world, because everything is just under lens. You're a little late on a payment, or a little whatever. You have basically a drone strike.
Well, it's also a metaphor for late stage capitalism, right? Which I think we're honestly going through these days. And I think capitalism is great to a point. Okay. And then after a certain point, the rich get richer and the poor just barely get by.
And so that's kind of what this comic is speaking to. And I mean, Scrapper is quite literally an underdog.
He really is. And the thing is, I want my favorite entertainment has heart, right? And that's one thing I think a lot of like superhero movies forget these days, right? They always jump to Act 3 with the big CGI superhero battle, right? And like, if you don't have the heart, I don't care about the big CGI battle. When Tony Stark snaps his finger and says, "I am Iron Man," they earned that, and I watched, there's a YouTube video where you can see the audience reaction in the cinema that somebody videotaped, and people just lost their minds. And that's where the magic comes from. It's the same thing with having, important moments like in Age of Ultron, where Cap and Tony are having the debate, outside Hawkeye's, farmhouse. Yeah. And, Cap grabs the wood and tears it in half, and you can see the setup for Civil War right there. And that's where it all comes together. And I think if you don't have that backbone with your entertainment, you don't have a leg to stand on. And that's where I think good entertainment comes from.
Absolutely. And yeah, that heart and Scrapper, I mean, you can really feel it as you read the comic. And what are some of Scrapper's inspirations in the comic itself? I know he has one buddy in particular. You know, and then the rats. I loved their dynamic. The birds, you know, like notice me senpai.
Well,
That
so
was so funny.
that was all Alex, by the way. Well, it goes back to the fact that I became a Broadway producer, right? I produced Hades Town, which wound up winning 8 Tonys, and after my video game studio, Boss Key wound up closing, and my dog died. It just broke me. And then to be there in Radio City Music Hall and to see it win 8 Tonys, and then recently again producing Once Upon a One More Time, the Britney Spears musical on Broadway.
Very cool.
We were spending a lot of time in New York, and I realized, as they say famously in Jurassic Park, life finds a way. And I remember seeing stray dogs, stray cats, the pigeons, all of it. Like, there's just so many urban animals that when you really look around the city, and I wanted to find a way to kind of unite them. And that's kind of what Scrapper ultimately winds up doing, is helping to unite these animals with his powers, and winds up, throwing a revolution in the city.
That is so cool. And you mentioned his powers a little bit. Can you get into it a little bit more? What does this guy have?
His coat's made of nanotechnology, so he's fireproof.
Nice.
The more powered up he gets, the more indigo he gets. His coat actually shifts and changes. And then, of course, he can Hulk out.
Yeah.
He has a super bark. And then he has this collar, right? And this collar is kind of my, Looney Tunes Acme kind of thing, where it can do whatever the hell I want it to do. It could send out tentacles to wrap up the bad guys. It can give them a jetpack. It can do all these kind of cool sorts of things. And so the other day, my wife frantically actually made a version of the collar for our Pomsky and posted a video on social media for it. And it actually lights up and everything, because she does cosplay, and she's very, very crafty. And then for me to see the Pomsky that inspired this IP wearing the collar that I came up with right before coming to Comic-Con and having a comic actually come out at Comic-Con was really an amazing moment for me. And one of the things that I love is creating these worlds and seeing something that I typed up, getting concept art for it, and then seeing it come to fruition, and then seeing people love it. It's one of the biggest highs you can have in the world.
Oh yeah, and how does Scrapper compare to some of your other titles? Because I know big name in video games. Even one of my colleagues mentioned follows you with that. Where does Scrapper line up with all your other accomplishments?
It's different. Well, it's actually full circle when I think about it, because one of my first big games was a game called Jazz Jackrabbit that came out in the 90s, where I remember being a child watching the Rambo movies and thinking about what if there was a Rambo rabbit? And Jazz was actually named after our dog, which was named after the Transformer Jazz in the first place. And I'm a big fan of alliteration. So then, I'm now back to making cool animal heroes, and so, Gears of War was about seemingly big, buff dude bro guys, but ultimately had a lot of heart at the end of the day. The Unreal and Unreal Tournament games were just, multiplayer games and whatnot. Fortnite multiplayer as well. And then it just came full circle where I wanted to tell a story that would hopefully make people feel something. And, that's why we create in the first place. And that's my tattoo right here. I don't know if you guys can see it. It's Harold and the Purple Crayon. Yeah. And I'm a lefty, so it reminds me to create.
That's so awesome. I think we're going to end it there. That was amazing. Thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, Cliff, book is Scrapper. Amazing read.
Image Comics.
Image Comics. Thank you again.
Yes, thank you.